don't care about a thing. I always took what I wanted. Well, I wanted everything. And I live for the moment. I wanted everything. I live for the moment. I live for the moment. Don't care about a thing. Always took what I wanted, and I wanted everything. 'Cause I live for the moment. Don't care about a thing. Always took what I wanted, and I wanted everything. And I live for the moment.
This is iRacing.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the iRacing Happy Hour here. Beautiful location here in Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. That's not French. Welcome everybody to the first of the two races we have on deck here today in the iRacing GP Sprint Series. This is going to be fast, it is going to be quick, and there will be no time for mistakes here as we are joined up here in the booth. My name is Keenan Kuzin, joined in the booth by Kenneth Bueno. And Kenneth, this is not going to be a long race, but it should be a quick one in terms of like pacing, in terms of how these guys are going to go. There's not a lot of passing here at Catalunya, so you got to make your moves quick. There's not a whole lot of time.
That's definitely true. There's going to be a lot of intensity based on the length of this race so far with these cars and with this track, and we're going to talk about all the details about the car and the track, this combo in particular, but it's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of the drivers on the official service, they've been putting up practice laps already, and they're ready for this 3 o'clock split. It's going to be so much fun today.
As we take another quick look at the racetrack, again, there's not a whole lot of passing zones here with how fast these Mercedes-AMG F1 W12E performance vehicles are. As we take, again, just look into the turn one, that's pretty well your biggest braking zone, where a lot of it's a lot of downforce corners, very, very fast racetrack. You also have that chicane there right at the end, and that's really the only really heavy braking zones. Other than that, you're relying on the downforce of this machine, and just hoping that when the guy in front of you makes a mistake, you can take advantage of some of these lower speed corners.
And one thing about Keenan, this track, Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya, is that it's an all-rounder. You've got a lot of short little corners that are very slow. You've got a lot of fast corners, a lot of sweeping corners, long straights, all of that. So you've got a bit of everything here in Spain. We'll take a look at the format. Not a long race, 16 laps, 46 miles. We'll go 74.4 kilometers in Keenan. One thing we'll talk about, no strategy. The fuel and the tires can get you to the end of this race alone. So it's going to be about driver skill and driver skill only. These races happen every 2 hours on the iRacing sim, so you'll have a good amount of time throughout the day to get your reps in with these cars at this track. And of course, when they switch on the schedule, I need a Class B 4.0 license to get into this series. This is the A-Class split that we're seeing here this afternoon, Keenan. So we're going to see some of the best put in these laps at Barcelona.
Yeah, and as you said, Kenneth, there is no pit stops projected for this race. Not long enough. That's why it's the sprint series. So you don't have to worry about stuff like tire compounds. You don't have to worry about fuel strategy, about saving those tires. You can use every bit of this vehicle in every lap, and whoever gets the most out of this machine is going to be who's taking home the checkered flag today.
Yeah, it's definitely true. So it's mostly going to be about how these guys are going to be concerned with tire wear. That's going to be very big. Of course, the air, how turbulent that gets with drivers around you in traffic. That is also going to be a very big point once we get to the end of this race and once everybody starts to spread out. So we're ready for it. Warm-up is already concluded. Qualifying is going to start here. So these drivers are going to put their fastest 2 laps to be on the grid. Try to be first.
Yeah, that's going to be such an important starting position as well. Again, like this is really, really tricky to pass here when you're racing at these speeds. This track is a lot of good passing zones for stuff like GT, maybe some mid-pace stuff, some stuff that more people are maybe a little bit more familiar in racing. But again, big Grand Prix cars. These things are fast. They are tons of downforce. You have to really rely on braking zones and those DRS zones as well, coming off of the first one. But really focusing on those braking zones as well. Again, qualifying positions is just excessively important here as we jump on board.
Yeah, and this so far, I mean, this race is ultimately going to be interesting because with these cars, the Mercedes-AMG F1 W12E Performance, these cars are built on the foundations of innovation. They are known for having all types of machinery, all types of little tidbits for aerodynamic purposes, and just trying to be the fastest car possible on track. So we're going to see that display here because ultimately, like I said, it's an all-rounder circuit here, Keenan. So you're going to see the highs and the lows. You're going to see a lot of the fast circuit parts of the tracks. You're going to see the chicanes. You're going to see very slow portions of the track. These guys really have to maneuver around. And as you're seeing in qualifying, a couple of guys putting in laps right now. Tomas Simon, a former Dallara iRacing IR01 championship driver, was in the series just a couple of months back in 2021. He's putting his laps in right now as he comes through the final chicane and will head out the final corner to go to the start-finish line.
Yeah, that series is no joke. If you've ever driven the IR01, tons of power in that vehicle. It is definitely something that is up this man's street as we look into these qualifying times here, waiting to see who will be starting on pole here in the iRacing Grand Prix Sprint Series here in Catalunya. Just very, again, like you said, I talked about the passing zones, but there is a lot of different corners on this track. There's not a whole lot you could do, let's say, in the second, after the second DRS zone, when you get into that little chicane area. Not a whole lot that you could do in terms of overtaking. And on the red series tires, we're not going to have to worry about tires in this race. Everyone's going to be out there on the same compound as we still have just over 5.5 minutes left to qualifying and see if these guys can get some times in here and maximize their starting position for the start of this race. Again, you don't want to be starting there at the back. Tons of field to get through and not a whole lot of time, with this race only really being about 16 laps, 17 laps. It's not going to take more than 15, 20 minutes, which is nothing when it comes to these kind of Grand Prix cars.
Yeah, it's not going to take long at all. And with this format, of course, this is a sprint series, so you're not going to go an endurance factor. You're not going to go so long. So we're going to see a lot of drivers be somewhat impatient. I know turn one is turn one at every single track. We know how crazy that can be for the hard braking zones when you get into that first chicane for the very first time. We're going to see a lot of guys try to be aggressive here, again, because it's a short race. You don't have a lot of time to plan out an execution. You really just have to go with the flow and wing it and try your best to put in the best laps and, of course, have the best track position by the end of it and take the win away. We're seeing a lot of great laps already. A 1:13.7 by the likes of Tomas Simon, immediately overcome by Oliver Stepanov in the 2, putting up a 1:13.6. And again, Keenan, just shows you how fast these cars are at this track as you look at the onboard here during qualifying. Stepanov, 1:13.6. That is remarkably quick for a track like this.
Yeah, there's a little bit of competition right behind him with the 3-car Simone. There's only 1.133 back, and then we have another 2 cars in Zuba at 422 and 576 out of that 10 vehicle. So that's your. Oh, we have just another one, just all within a second. Not impossible that those guys could stay with that leader, and it's of course top 2 within 2/10. You basically throw a blanket over them. So I think that race before the lead is going to be within those top 2 drivers, but very close in the midfield. There as well, we see the number 13 right behind them. Very, very close, only within a couple of tenths. So that's just a qualifying lap. You can make up for that in the race. Again, not really going to have to worry about so much about strategy. So the 1-lap pace might mean a little bit more in this race than it would in something that would be double or triple this length. But moving into about 3 minutes left to qualifying here as we get another lap time in. Not gonna shuffle the board up too much here as we jump on board. Just waiting to see these guys get all their laps in. On board with the 7 machine. Coming around. Again, very, very high downforce. A lot of high downforce corners here. Using all of that curbing as well, making sure you get in all the way into the apex. Use all of the momentum in these cars and all the grip in these tires to make sure that you are maximizing these middle speed corners. Coming into these fast left, right, uphill. This could be so easy to make a mistake here. There's that curbing on the inside. You touch that just a little bit, and that is game over. These cars, you know, not a whole lot of tight suspension, not a whole lot of room for error when it comes to hopping a curb a little bit, maybe jumping this, jumping that. One mistake, and you are in the barrier, or at least backwards.
And that's the trade-off, Keenan, with these open-wheel cars. They're built for speed, they're built for quickness, they're built for aerodynamics, but one thing they're not built for is contact. We talk a lot about other cars in the service, GT cars, stock cars, and how they're able to withstand a bit of hits. These cars, not really so. So you're going to have to be very careful about what you're doing with this car and how you're treating it. That's the thing about these cars as well, Keenan, the fact that you can drive them very fast, and they're relatively easy to drive when you're going slower, but when you're driving at the limit, it can be very, very difficult. And again, that one mistake can send you into a barrier. And luckily, this track has a lot of runoffs, so fortunately, if somebody does go off track, they'll go for a bit of a skip into the gravel or the grass, and it won't be too significantly harsh on them. But there are still walls, there are still barriers. This is a racetrack after all, so you're going to have to look for that as you continue to ride on board. A bit of wheel lock up there to the first chicane. This is the 9 car here of Dylan Freckleton. He still has yet to put up a lap, so he's one of the later drivers here, Keenan, to put in a qualifying time. And I think that's also going to matter as well, because we see drivers do this all over the iRacing service. Go on qualifying a little bit later, maybe see what happens with the track temperature, see what happens with the track conditions, and see if it's more favorable for them to a little bit later than to immediately jump the gun as soon as qualifying starts.
Yeah, super common, especially on the roadside as well. And we only have waiting on that 9 car of Dylan Freckleton to get a time in, but new leader up on the pole position, Matteo Ugolotti. We have seen him in the Dallara series before. Very, very competitive, very exciting driver to watch. 3/10 on the field, Kenneth Bueno. We talked about a little bit earlier when we were talking about qualifying. It was a little bit close there at the top between the top 3 drivers. Ugolotti has put the work in to get that 3/10 advantage as we are just nearing the end of qualifying here.
You know, I'm not surprised, Keenan, to see Matteo Ugolotti, the driver that was in the Force Dynamics iRacing Grand Prix Championship earlier in late 2021 and was one of the titans in the point standings apart from Peter Berryman and Martin Van Lozenoord. So no surprise we're seeing Ugolotti in the front end. Also cool to see, Keenan, 4 of those Pro Championship drivers in late 2021 are in this race with these cars at this track. So it's awesome to see that they're continuing their open wheel prestige in the iRacing service and continue to look at qualifying now in the final 20 seconds. So start finish line got to get very, very close. It's going to be the last sector of this Barcelona-Catalunya circuit coming through the final corners here. We'll go through the final chicane. Start finish line very close. He's got to get there very quickly too. Yeah, I don't think Freckleton's going to get a time in, so we're just waiting on seeing if anybody can top Matteo Ugolotti with a 1:13.386, and it does not look like that's going to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a grid set for our first race here at the iRacing Happy Hour here at the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya. Number 1 is going to be Matteo Ugolotti. With number 2, Oliver Stepanov going to be taking that second spot. Thomas Simon going to be number 3, with Andreas J. Henkel going to be in position number 4. Peter Zuba coming in 5th, and Igor Filipix is going to be round out the first 3 rows in the 6th position. We'll look through 7th on back. It's Anthony Can, the 6th machine, who will roll off P7. It is Kaz Gisbers in the number 13. He'll be 8th. Patrick Zaha will be 9th. And then behind him will be Aaron Nanvar in the 18. Will round out your top 10. Here are the final drivers. Keenan through row number 6. Northern Simata in the 8th. And Dimitri Nanba in the number 14, P12.
Sam White's going to be running in the 13th position, with Kent Nielsen going to be in 14th. Fede Rosano is going to be 15th place, with Stefan Williams coming in 16th. Adrian Clark 17th, with Marcos Bulci in 18th, and finally Dylan Freckleton going to not be the only one without a time on the board, coming there in 19th. A lot of vowels in this driver list, Kevin. Tons of vowels I've written there.
And a lot of international representation too. So I mean, it's a lot of diversity, a lot of different types of drivers, and they're already lined up on the grid. And what's magical about these Grand Prix cars with this track? Standing starts. No rolling, no pace car. You just see the lights go out, and you're on your way.
And speaking of those lights, we're waiting for them. Everybody on the grid waiting to see these machines barrel down into turn 1. Again, not a whole lot of time in this race. Willing to see if there's going to be a scuffle in turn number 1. More and more tension building here, waiting for all of these 19 cars to be on this racetrack so we can start here in our first race here in the iRacing Happy Hour in Barcelona. It's pronounced all the difficult stuff and messed up the easy part. Excellent.
Barcelona.
Thank you. That's why you're
too.
here, Kenneth.
Also, yes, the Spanish speaker, but look at all the revs. You can hear drivers already at the maximum revs here, over 10,000 here with these Grand Prix cars, and there they go, green flag out and away. They're ready to get this race won, and iRacing Happy Hour underway side by side here, stepping off 3 wide into turn 1.
Yeah, they are not messing about as we go. Just opting to lift on the brakes there a little bit. I saw Ugolotti just trying to pinch the second place vehicle right behind him of Stepanov. He put a little bit of hurt to him, but not enough to get away with the lead.
And everybody's seeing the file through the fresh chicane, of course. Look how tight that part of the track is. Turn 1, turn 2 through the Elf corner into Renault. You do not want to be side by side. That's going to be one of the worst placements for you. That is where you can be prone to contact. It looks like pretty much most of the field, all single file. We have 2 drivers on pit road to start. Fede Rosano and Stephen Williams, the 12 and the 11, so they will not get the green flag immediately up at the front of the field. Let everybody single file once again, and Ugolotti will lead the charge once again.
Yeah, everyone kind of just chilling out here a little bit, which is not something I kind of expected to see. Not a whole lot of time in this sprint race. We saw lap times of 1:13 in qualifying, 16 laps in the race. It is not going to take long for this race to be completed, but everyone kind of just settling in, trying to find their pace here in the first lap, and we've already, I guess, had 2 incidents, 2 cars off track, so all those guys just trying to do their best. And something I just noticed, we have two drivers on the mediums as well. Dylan Freckleton not getting that qualified tag, just kind of going for broke, I suppose, and Patrick Zaha as well on the mediums. Maybe we'll see them kind of push towards the end, but keep an eye on those 2 drivers for the late end stage of this race.
Yeah, I was about to say that, Keenan. That's the magic with these Grand Prix races now with the tire compounds on iRacing is that you can choose what compound you want to start with. And in the Force Dynamics Dallara iRacing Grand Prix Championship, we saw a lot of guys flirt with different strategies, whether they wanted to go for the hard tires to begin, whether they wanted to go for the softs to get the maximum out of a short run, or maybe go for the medium and try to get the best of both worlds, but they needed to really be careful with those tires. Most of the field on the soft, but we'll see exactly what Zaha and Freckleton do on those medium tires and whether they can last throughout the next 15 laps or so. Matteo Ugolotti leading by just about 0.4 of a second, but don't look now. Stepanov and Simon are there. They're close enough within range. They just haven't made the move yet. Maybe they can do so in the next long straight, which should be the start-finish line. They're coming through the final sector once again here at Barcelona.
The best thing Stepanov and Simon could do right now is just kind of truce. Obviously, they do want to fight for this lead, but if they spend too much time squabbling for second, Ugolotti can and will open that gap up to a point where he's going to be able to sail away to a comfortable victory. So we need these 2 guys to be able to just put their weapons down just for a couple of laps and see if they can either just stay with Matteo or be able to close that gap and kind of play into this false insecurity of they're going to fight behind me. Everything's really close. I could just cruise to an easy win here. The best thing that you guys can do is just wait until maybe about halfway to kind of see where the race is. And if it's a race for second, they can have that race for second. But right now, they are staying with Matteo Ugolotti. He is pulling away just a little bit, Kenneth, but it is not to a point where I don't think they can catch him. If they just get a little, Matteo makes one little mistake, misses one little apex, hits a little curve a little bit too high, they're right there to capitalize on any mistake.
That's definitely true. They are within striking distance, so they're not going to just let Ugolotti run away with this. And if he does make a mistake, he will be at the mercy of both the 2 and the 3. And Stepanov has done a fantastic job on that start. Almost went for the lead there in turn 1. It is now closing in. Last time by, set a lap a little bit slower than the race leader Ugolotti, but not by much. So he is still closing in on the number 1 machine. Rather, no battles throughout the midfield for the most part. Everyone all single file. And it looks like for Zaha and Freckleton, they remain 12th and 13th on the medium tires. So at this point, Keenan, not much they can do so far.
Yeah, we'll take another quick look at that start. Again, did not expect it. I mean, thought it was going to be a crazy start, but 3 wide right off the start as we get the green flag dropped here. And Ugolotti trying to defend that inner position off the start. As you see, move just a little bit to the right there. All those cars fanning out from this grid start. So much opportunity to be able to make big jumps, but those top three kind of just staying in line. They thought about it going 3 wide into turn 1, backed out. The fourth driver backed out, and that white machine just kind of opting to not really push the envelope here. You could absolutely end your race in turn 1. I believe that was Andres Henkel who sent it 3 wide and said, you know what, I think I'll think better of it. But all those 4, 5, actually it's 5 drivers now, as we have the Igor Filipic joining the fray here. I think that's pretty well the tail end of this lead group, though 6th and 7th position, and Peter Zuba and Anthony Cat are absolutely doing their best to try to catch up.
Yeah, Keenan, looking back at that start, I mean, they were very brave going into turn 1. I think if I was in that car, I would have broken probably at least maybe 300 feet before that turn 1 entry, and I would have been way back at the end of the field regardless. But still a great start for them as you continue to watch around the midfield here. Filipic is gaining on the guys 4th up ahead. Henkel will be the next one on the chopping block if we can get to him. And you're watching this battle around P8. This is Aranandra, Kaz Gisbers. You see Peter Zuba in the 5 trying to hold them all off. 7th on back. These cars, Keenan, all starting to clunch up together. So maybe we just have 2 battles. The battle for P1 and the battle for P7.
Yeah, pretty much. Again, it's almost as... Oh, as we see 2 wide going into turn number 1. Peter Zuba, they're trying to defend the inside. Kaz Gisbers trying to stick it to the left, but he's going to grab a little bit too much curve there, Kenneth. Not be able to make that pass for 7th position. They fall back in line once again. I was just about to say the battles look pretty similar, but this one in the back of the midfield, it isn't for the win, but it's still very feisty.
And again, like I said, Keenan, you do not want to go side by side through turns 1 and turns 2. It got very risky between Gisberg and Zuba there. You see the pass there just on the inside. That is one of the slower parts of the chicane and a bit of an off track there on the curve. So an attempted pass off for naught there in the last sector here at Circuit de Barcelona. So ultimately that just shows how hard you have to really keep yourself in it in order to make these passes complete. And just as quickly as you make a pass, somebody can make the pass back on you if you go a little bit wide or if you overextend yourself on the curve. So you just got to be very careful. And these guys, these leaders so far, Keenan, very careful on the curves, and that's what allowed them to be so fast. But Velotti has been the most careful and the most quick, 0.8 of a second on P2.
Yeah, it's really risk versus rewards of these very fast sprint races. Yeah, you could take a little bit more, dive a little bit more on the brakes, pushing a little bit more on these apexes, run those risk of all those curbs, but you also run the risk of making those mistakes as well. And it's not like you have 30-40 minutes to be able to catch back up. If you drop back a second, that might be your race over. So you do have to take those risks, try to gain these tenths here and there to be able to stay in the hunt for the race for positions, but also at the same time, if you make a mistake, it will cost you.
And also, mistakes are prone at the low-speed corners with this Mercedes-AMG F1 W12E performance car because, of course, since they're known for aerodynamic purposes, when you go in these very fast sectors where you're kind of pretty much full throttle or you lay off the throttle just a little bit, the car will take you through it. It will not step out. It will just hug the corner perfectly, and it will do what you tell it to do. But when you're in the slow corners, that's why you see a lot of open-wheel drivers so good at it. When they come off the slow corners, the car gets very squirrely, the rear end starts to kick out, and then you really have to wonder how much throttle you're putting into the car, making sure you don't step it out. And of course, don't wear off the rear tires and don't light them up as much. So we're seeing a bunch of those mistakes already where the high-speed corners are not an issue, frankly, for these guys. Once they come in that final sector where it really starts to woe things down, they can get very loose and very squirrely, and that's where you see a lot of these mistakes come out, and a lot of the attempted passes pretty much cancel themselves out as well.
Yeah, we talked about not really have to worry about saving your equipment, but you overheat these rear tires, that is game over. It's you do not recover from that. You could lose a lot of time. That could be seeing you have a decent race in the midfield to dropping way back into these back positions here. But it's something that you said too as well. You think that you're good coming out of the slower corners with these. The faster corners give you this false sense of security of you just have all the grip all the time. You come out of these slow corners, you can be in 4th gear and still spin the rear tires on this thing. It is not a hard thing to do. So to be able to have that throttle control and that patience and that discipline coming out of the slow corners, be able to give you the best run down some of these long straights is what we see people like our leader, Marco Ugolotti, pulling away with.
Yeah, that's definitely true. You can really get loose when you try to overstep this car, and that's why, again, like I say, it's hard to drive at the limit. It's easier to drive slowly, but once you start really pushing the car and getting it into its pace, getting it into its rhythm, that's where it really becomes a challenge. And once again, Keenan, the top 3 have not let each other go, and frankly, we'll bring in the top 4 because Andreas Henkel, one of the Force Dynamics Solara iRacing Grand Prix Championship drivers from late last year, is slowly starting to catch up on fellow Grand Prix Championship car Tomasz Szymon in the 3. So this is going to get very heated up very quickly. Again, on board with the 3, just behind the 2 of Stepanov, and he's been close enough to make passes happen here, Keenan. He's just been very patient, waiting until maybe the next half of this race to really push this car and these soft tires, because by now, Keenan, they are wearing significantly. They're starting to really fall off.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on those. We have to look at those medium drivers as well. As we take a quick look, as with car 7 and car number 9, that's Dylan Frankleton in this 9, and Kent Nielsen in the 7. Just a quick and easy pass for the number 7 of Kent, getting past one of our medium runners there, actually, in Dylan. So I don't think that strategy is paying off. We'll probably see him push a little bit towards the end of the race, maybe just banking that some of these guys were going to overheat, overuse those soft tires. But obviously there's still some pace in those reds as we move into the second half of our race.
Yeah, and that was a textbook pass there into turn 1 by the likes of Kent Nielsen there in the 7. Just getting to the inside, using the straight, using the draft to his advantage, and then peeking his nose down low, and then Freckleton pretty much just saying, all right, I'm not going to go side by side with you at all. I'm going to back out, and I'm going to save my race car for later in this event. So Nielsen gets that pass, and he's still got about, let's say, a second and a half to Patrick Zaha, who's also on the medium tires here in P12. So he's splitting the middle there between the 2 medium takers here for this sprint race, and so we'll see if it ends up working out better for them or if they're just going to stagnate in the same place, same time. Here's a look from Stepanov in the 2. He's remained himself in second, Keenan, since the drop of the green on the starting grid. And pretty much 1, 2, 3, they're in the place where they started. They haven't really moved at all.
So we talked about it a little bit in the beginning. The best thing they could do is not let Marco Ugolotti get away. Congratulations, they've done that. Marco Ugolotti is within distance of striking is, however, they've all kind of got 2 car lengths or 3 car lengths in between them all. They have a little bit of breathing room. They're not having to worry about getting dove on the brakes. However, did they wait a little bit too long to get feisty for second, third, fourth, as they might have a little bit too much space. We take a look at Dylan again. Another one of our medium runners going into that last tight section, and just like that, you talked about it a little bit earlier, Kenneth, just oversteering a little bit, maybe just trying to use a bit more of those medium tires that there was available to them, losing that front wing, and that's going to cost Dylan huge.
It's exactly what I said, Keenan. Coming off those slow-speed corners, this car is very snappy. It can get very loose. The likes of Freckleton, that may very well just end his race. That last chicane, one of the slowest, if not the slowest part of this Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya circuit, as it looks like he'll try to get himself back underway. He's going to go into the chicane once again, but he has fallen all the way back to P16. Look at this battle right now for position. They're going into turn 1, getting very close. That's Northern Mota in the 8 machine, Aaron Nandra in the 18. There goes the 8-4 pass. That is P9 on the racetrack.
Yeah, it's what you got to do, though, Kenneth. You said maybe not going for overtakes in 1 and 2, but we're in the second half of the race now. You know, these guys have let each other relax a little bit. It's time to start making moves. The only way you're really going to get an overtake done there is if you try to take the line away from the car you're passing. That's what Northern did. Got the spot, nice and clean. He's up into 9th position.
Yeah, textbook pass there, much like we saw earlier on with cars around the midfield. And Nandra, I saw a couple of corners ago, one of the lower speed parts of this track ended up locking up the brakes, and that's also something you do not want to do, because these are soft tires here, Keenan. They wear off very quickly over these sprint races, and when you lock them up, you're pretty much just flat spotting them, and you can only make it worse. In that case, there's a look up top, race for the lead. Matteo Ugolotti still pulling away from Stepanov, although the gap is maintained still at about 7/10 of a second. And then, of course, on the bottom side, race for 9th right now. Mota have made that pass on Nandra, and they have yet to make any changes for position. The whole field remains single file. I think Keenan, Stepanov is starting to put a little more pressure that time. A faster lap, 1:17.036 for Stepanov, a 1:17.089 for your race leader, Ugolotti.
Yeah, they are trading lap times right now, Kenneth. You got to keep the DRS factor in mind. So if Oliver Stepanov, I don't know why I went French there. I just assume everybody's Canadian. Stepanov, keep up through the corners with Ugolotti and not really let him get away, which it looks like he is doing. He used that DRS zones to catch right back up to Matteo Ugolotti and make sure he doesn't get way too far ahead. But matching lap times is not going to cut it. He did get a little bit faster again, but it's only by a couple hundredths. That is a 7/10 gap he's got to take down here. He's got to start finding big gains soon. Big move on the brakes there from Stepanov, getting a ton of time. He's going to lose a little bit on the exit, though, but if he could just make sure he doesn't fall out of DRS range, he's within a good shot. I'm not sure to quite get the lead, but he can at least challenge here in the closing stage of this race.
And Keenan also noticing back in P4 and P3, Tomasz Simon, Andreas Henkel, they made huge dives to keep themselves in the range with Stepanov and Ugolotti. So they're also doing the same thing. And we're coming up to the last 5 laps here, Keenan. So the time is running out. It's a relatively long circuit, but these cars, again, so quick, so fast to lap these circuits around. And so you really have to make these moves. You really have to start putting on the pressure, or else pretty much everything you did in this whole race is just to maintain your position. So Stepanov needs to step it up right now on Ugolotti here if he wants to make a pass for the lead.
Ugolotti with a 17 flat. Oliver Stepanov with another 17 flat. Thomas Simon 17 flat. Fast driver out of the 4. Andreas Henkel with a 16.8. These guys are almost on top of each other, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, but I think Andreas, out of all of them, has the most of gains. I don't know if he's just been saving, if he's just been waiting with making sure he doesn't use too much of his tires. I don't know how much longer you want to wait, pal. There's 5 laps left to go at 1 minute and 15 seconds or so around this Barcelona circuit. There is not a whole lot of time to get a move done. So if you've got anything left in the tank with those tires, it's time to use them now.
And the German Andreas Henkel right now, he's pretty much in the tail end of this group right now, 1, 2, 3, 4. So he needs to try and do something to puncture his way into the top 3 and maybe at least get a podium here by the time this race is all said and done with Tomasz Simon up in front. That was a big wiggle there out of Simon there in the final chicane. So maybe, just maybe, Keenan, this could give the opportunity for Henkel to make a move into turn 1, but way too far back to get the draft up ahead on the 3. So he'll wait just a couple more turns to maybe make the pass complete, but 3rd and 4th are now starting to fall off of 1st and 2nd. There may just be 2 battles spread amongst themselves, and it's going to be Stepanov versus Ugolotti if we're going to talk about the case for the win right now.
Yeah, Ugolotti just stepped up 2 tenths there. And, you know, that doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but with how consistent and how close these guys have been on pace, if Ugolotti's just been saving and making sure he doesn't use his tires and now he's going to start scooting away, that's a little bit of bullying. I think that's a little bit unfair. I just wanted to flip the lap times really quick. You saw Henkel, he almost had that run coming down the straight, just did a little bit of motocross on the sausage curbs there right in the last couple of corners. It's kind of unfortunate that the slowest corners on the track and the ones with the most vicious curbs lead down the longest straight. So you have to make sure that you don't take those corners too tight, or you could just see yourself like Henkel and dropping up from Tomasz Simon from Hungary before all the Hungarians get mad at us for not pronouncing anything correctly. As we take a quick look at the number 6 car of Anthony Catt, trying to stay on the tail end of this battle, as the car in front of him, Igor Filippic, is trying to catch 4th place. Again, not super out of the battle, Kenneth, but unless there's a mistake from those top 4, unless they start fighting soon, P5 is not a bad position to be in, but might be the end of this run here today.
And Filippic, though, he was way closer to the top 4 earlier on in this race, so ultimately he's falling back, and Cat may put the pressure here by the time they come back to turn 1 in the final laps of this race. And I think when you talked about Ugolotti there setting the fastest time, once again, setting a lap in the 16.9 range, a bit in the same range as Stepanov. I think he just did the lean over move, that meme where the guy with the gaming controller just leans forward and says, all right, I'm just going to do this, and I'm just going to put it all on everybody. Ugolotti was doing it right now, and again, will extend the gap to almost 8/10 of a second. If you continue to look at piece number 6, and the number 6 car catching on Filippic, but he has yet to build the charge enough to get onto the inside or outside.
The uphill left-right of Matteo Ugolotti, I don't know how he just did that, but the car was sideways. As we take a quick look back to the battle for the top, the 11th position, Kent Nielsen just overtook Dmitry Nanbat. Dmitry gonna see if they can make a move there, but understeering a little bit wide into the DRS zone. You want to be able to carry as much speed onto these DRS straights as possible, as it looks like Dmitry is suffering from front grip issues. Just not quite getting that car rotated like the way they're looking for. If this looks like something you guys want to get yourself involved in, you go to iRacing.com right now. We are doing 40% off of all new memberships, and you can take a look right now on iRacing.com. There's road racing, dirt road racing, rallycross, dirt ovals. We're going to see a little bit later from Weed Sport. If you have like motorsport, you're in the right place. iRacing.com. All new memberships are 40% off right now.
You know, what's also great, Keenan, about iRacing and these official sessions is that when you get placed in one, when you register, you get all the drivers in the same skill set as you around the same iRating. So you're going to see battles, you're going to see racing all over the track, because at some point you're going to have somebody with equal skill as you, and you're going to go toe-to-toe with them on the racetrack. So it's awesome to see. And it's also really cool that we're seeing guys like Ugolotti, Tomasz Simon, Andreas Henkel, some of the best in the Pro World Championships, putting it on against each other here in this race. And we're coming up to the final lap. Ugolotti continues to remain in the race lead. Stepanov has yet to be close enough to make this move. We're coming up on the white flag. This is the last sector here. Final sweeping corner through Bank Sarabel, and then through the chicane RACC, the Europe car corner, and then New Holland. The last corner here before the start-finish line. Stepanov will have to try something miraculous if he can beat Ugolotti for P1.
I almost think he got trapped into the sense of, I need to catch the leader. I need to catch the leader. You see him gain so much time on the brakes, but maybe that just put a little bit too much wear, a little bit too much pressure on his front tires. The lap times are starting to drop, but not by much, only by a couple of tenths. So I don't think we're going to see those medium drivers end up being a factor here. But our leader, Matteo Ugolotti, just has been setting the pace and just been going, like, I don't mean like a tenth faster, like half a tenth faster. His pace discipline has been very, very impressive to watch, which is why he's a world-level driver, or world-class level driver.
It's just consistency, Keenan, plain and simple. And if you have that consistency along with the raw pace, it's only going to make you better. And for Ugolotti and gang, it just continues to show here. Ugolotti will look like he'll clear to the win unless he makes many big mistakes, although it doesn't appear to be the case over the 16 laps. And you just took a slight look at the battle for 5th. Olympic and Catman going at it so far in the last sector here, so we'll keep an eye on that. But Ugolotti, Keenan, coming to the final sector here at Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya, will be looking for the win here in this Grand Prix Sprint Series.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was an easy one if he could keep this together. Stepanov definitely kept him honest. A little bit of a lockup as well on the last lap from Ugolotti, but not enough to be able to sacrifice that first place position, using all of the racetrack, just clipping those curbs and moving on into the final straight. As Matteo Ugolotti is going to be taking your win here in the first race of our iRacing Happy Hour in the Grand Prix Sprint Series. Nice and smooth. Yeah, what a drive. Very impressive.
And they're stepping off there to give us congratulations. I mean, insane race by both of them. You got to give props. I mean, also to Thomas Simon, to Henkel, to Felipe, all these guys that were hanging in the top 4, top 5. They just tried all that they could. And unfortunately, it wasn't enough to get over Ugolotti for the race win. But still, I mean, got to give props to them, how fast they were, how consistent they were to keep themselves with the race leader. But the Italian, Matteo Ugolotti, finished P6 in the World Championship earlier last year. He is P1 here in this official race.
Yeah, doing his best to be able to not lose that skill set and stay sharp. And he got tested there, having 3 cars right behind him, those sharks ready to pounce at any moment. But there was no such moment, as Matteo Ugolotti kept it strong, consistent, and impressive with a 7/10 win over Oliver Stepanov. Thomas Simon getting in 3rd place. Andreas Henkel right behind him in 4th. Igor Filipiks ended up keeping that 5th place, as Anthony Cat finished in 6th position.
I'll look through 7th on back. That's Peter Zuba in the 8th car who comes home in the 5th. 5 car comes home P7. That's Kaz Gisberg in the 13 coming home P8. Aranandra in the 18 coming home P9. And Kent Nielsen in the 7 is the last one in the top 10. We'll look through the drivers 11th on back to finalize this race. Northern Malta in the 8 car. He finishes 11th. Dimitri Namba will be in the 14 car P12. Patrick Zaha, despite the call for mediums, did not work out for him near the end. He drops a couple positions, ends up 13th. Marcos Avila Bulki in the 16. He'll end up 14th. Adrian Clark in the 17 will be P15. Sam White will be 16th, and then the final ones in the field, Dylan Freckleton, also on mediums, exited the race a little bit earlier. He's 17th. Then Fede Rosano and Stephen Williams, I don't believe they made the grid, Keenan, here, 12 in the 11 cars. So they were out of this race already, and unfortunately, they weren't able to show all what they can have here from Barcelona.
It is what it is, man. You have one chance, one shot, especially in these short little races. As we saw, you make one mistake, and that's kind of it. And even those bottom 3, or those not bottom 3, the top 4 racers, they tried to make something happen there at the end, but just not enough time, unfortunately. And that's the sprint race. That qualifying is just so important, especially when you're at this level and everyone's so close in terms of speed, in terms of pace. You can't really make these huge charges through the field. It's just, it is what it is. We saw some good battles, saw some good racing, some close races, some tight racing, but Matteo Ugolotti taking the win pretty convincingly.
Yeah, great job by Ugolotti as a whole to hold the lead and then even pressure off the charges in turn 1. I mean, he could have gotten scared and then just pushed out, but instead kept his foot in it, kept a lot of his composure. And of course, that's the World Championship driver that we've gotten to know over the past year. And Ugolotti gets the win here in the Sprint Series race. A great race overall for him.
Yep, and we had another great race as well at the Nürburgring from the Porsche Series. To take a quick look at some of the highlights from last round at the Nürburgring. Our next round will be at Monza. You want to talk about tracks that are really, really, really tough and really fun to watch, Monza ought to be on the list. June 4th, we will hope to see you guys there for the Porsche Super Cup race. It is going to be a lot of drafting, a lot of very physical racing. As you can see here, just from the Nürburgring, they've got the one big straight here on the end, but Monza is basically like that the whole way around. So they're going to be very, very close, a lot of fighting. Going to be a very entertaining race to watch.
It's going to be a lot of fun to watch these drivers speed through Monza, one of the fastest tracks in the Porsche esports calendar, and you watch their battle going downhill. I mean, Nürburgring, one of the hardest tracks to maneuver as a driver by yourself, but Monza, as you're going so fast, it is just so tough to keep the speed up and wound the momentum. So we'll see all those guys try to take that famous Italian circuit in just a couple of weeks' time. It's going to be so much fun to see them continue to run for the championship very close all throughout the entire field, so it's going to be awesome to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, too, it is the birthplace of speed over in Italy. That track has so much heritage, so much, it's such a big member in the motorsport community. As we also had a race on Tuesday night from Kansas. We're going to be seeing you guys again on May 24th from the Charlotte Motor Speedway for the iRacing Coca-Cola, eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series from Charlotte. Not a bad place to be. Kenneth, a little bit more your wheelhouse than the oval stuff, but Charlotte, talk about the birthplace of speed, that's almost the birthplace of NASCAR.
When we talk about eNASCAR, that's the home of NASCAR right there for the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, and we've seen amazing racing. Kansas saw the multi-grooves, guys getting loose, guys going all over the place, and ultimately Charlotte is going to be one of the most pivotal rounds when it comes down to the championship. Already multiple winners in that 2022 campaign, so add in the Charlotte Motor Speedway, it looks rather easy from a first glance, but with those next-gen cars, it is very, very tough to drive. So it is going to prove as the ultimate challenge just 1 week from today. And so the eNASCAR talent going to really put it on in Charlotte Motor Speedway. That's also going to be a great sight. So much to look forward to, Keenan. I'm excited. I don't know about you.
Yeah, obviously, I'm always excited with anything that we do over here on iRacing. Again, if you've seen anything today that you must say, wow, that looks so much fun, I want to get into it, you absolutely can. Head over to iRacing.com right now. Every new membership is 40% off, whether that's a month, 2 months, 3 months, a year. Go ahead and jump on that, ladies and gentlemen. We can't wait to see you on the service. As we, again, just waiting for this second race here from Weed Sports Speedway. Again, taking a look here at Barcelona. We said right there, like first two corners, there wouldn't be any passing at all, or very minimal passing. Ended up working out really well for our lead driver, being able to pull away from that. We usually see these cars in a little bit longer races. We didn't end up seeing the tire strategy at all today. We saw those two guys going for mediums, but at that point, when you're starting back in the 12th or 13th position, you got to try something different. You can't do the same thing as everybody else. You're not going to go forward that way, especially if you're not super confident on your pace as well.
Yeah, it's just a gamble you have to take, and unfortunately for the guys on the medium tires, we really didn't see the full potential out of those, and especially when you have a sprint race, only 16 laps, there's not much of a window you can really operate in at 150% with those medium tires. So unfortunately for them, they fall through the field, and they're just kind of hanging around the mid-pack, didn't really get to show how fast they were. I think the first thing I took away, Keenan, from that race, soft tires in the sprint series, check. You need those, or else you're probably going to maybe fall back just a little bit, and the tires won't help you all too much in a difference. So we talk about somewhat of a lack of passing and really hard to pass with those cars. Weed Sport with the dirt late models, that's going to be a passing haven. We're going to see a lot of guys slipping and sliding all over the track, maybe 3-4 wide, going all over the place. So when we have that show a little bit later on in this happy hour session, Keenan, that's going to be so much fun. I know we're not commentating that, but we're going to be watching that, and it's just going to be another difference in how iRacing is so diverse, the way you can go road racing, and then the next minute, the next hour, just go dirt late model racing in an entirely different category.
Yeah, ladies, we talk about we weren't commentating it. Ladies and gentlemen, your commentary team for that dirt race at Weed Sport, Taylor Burris and Devin Henry are going to be joining us up here in the booth. Taylor, Devin, we talked about a little bit quickly of how that's going to be a very, very aggressive race, a lot of passing. As people are a little bit more familiar with that form of motorsport, what do we have to expect here from Weed Sport?
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome as we get ready for that second half of the race here at Weed Sports Speedway. Going to provide a lot of great racing action where we'll see a lot of the top-tier drivers in the World of Outlaws Dirt Late Model Series on iRacing compete, battling out. And, of course, Devin, one thing we also have to talk about, this is a great opportunity for drivers to test their might as we get ready for a really special thing that's about to be happening right now. It is the iRacing World of Outlaws case modeled, of course, Tour Championship kicking off in a few months' time.
Hey, if you think you can be one of the best, and this is exactly where you come. Whenever you can on iRacing, you go and get those repetitions, and when it comes to a racetrack like Weed Sport, such a unique D-shaped oval where the back straightaway, this is not a straightaway by any means. You're essentially holding that steering wheel to the left or maybe most of the time to the right. The entire time you're going from 2 to 3, one of the most unique dirt tracks on the entire iRacing service. If you want to get ready for that championship series, this is a combo and a track specifically that you want to make sure that you check out, because this is one that can throw a couple of screws at people, a couple of wrenches at people when you go, and then you need to throw the kitchen sink right back at it.
Certainly is the case. Of course, we're getting ready to get ready for that action momentarily. But for Keenan, Kenneth, final thoughts, of course, for the great racing action in the Grand Prix Sprint Fix Series.
Super aggressive start, super aggressive in the midfield, but kind of the tail of the race was just trying to stay consistent and making the most out of every 10th, which is just Grand Prix racing in general. Kenneth, as somebody, I'm not sure how much experience you have in these cars in this service, but as another racer, what are your final thoughts here for the race?
I think ultimately it was very apparent that these cars are very tough to drive in many cases here at this Barcelona track. We saw a lot of great moves, and look at that move in turn 1, just showed us how aggressive every driver was. But I mean, you look at some of the best drivers on the iRacing service when it comes to the open wheel category. Matteo Ugolotti, who was in that Pro Championship in 2021. I mean, no surprise that he ran well. We saw some great moments, some really textbook passes, shows you how good these cars can operate there when they're side by side and in the very low speed corners. But ultimately, I mean, the composure was kept by your race leader. We had some great charges by second on back and some great calls by them to try and do things differently to maybe take Ugolotti out of his game. But ultimately, Ugolotti was with the win, and we end up with the sprint series completed.
Ladies and gentlemen, do not go anywhere. We are coming back for coverage from the Dirt Late Models at Weed Sport. Do not go anywhere. We still have so much more to come. See you soon.
Good afternoon and welcome back as we continue our iRacing happy hour experience here on the iRacing service. We just got done with the iRacing Grand Prix Sprint Series at Barcelona, but now we continue on and we're going to just be taking left turns now as we get ready to see some great racing action with the Arca Menards cars on the iRacing service. Devin, a lot of things changing now here in the iRacing service, but this one has been a main staple in iRacing oval competition for years.
And I tell you what, going to Hickory, while you know what, we might not be turning quite as right as the dirt cars. Sometimes here you can be peeling that wheel a little bit to the right. So, like you said, this is a staple series. We're going back to essentially what the NASCAR stock cars were almost, 2 decades ago. That feels weird just saying that. And yeah, like you said, a staple in the service and a very staple kind of racetrack, a little bit new to the service, but one that is known worldwide as well.
And of course, for those of you wondering what happened to the Dirt Late Model Series that we were about to cover, unfortunately, due to the fact of a small number of drivers not entering into that Dirt Late Model Series, decided to go to a different avenue to try out some of the other official series that you yourselves can go and try out if you join us on iRacing. But of course, we are going to be utilizing the Arca cars at Hickory, another, though, great service and a great track that's been recently released here on the iRacing service.
Yeah, and that's a lot of fun when you're able to have some of these, always when you get new content on iRacing, you're going to find yourself with one of those new tracks that you're able to jump onto the service with. And directly right here, you look at just how old this track is. It kind of has that kind of a vintage feel to it, but when you come to a track like this, you already see the 6 car right there kind of grabbing onto that apron there on the bottom. It's so difficult to turn this car sometimes, and you want to do whatever you can to make sure that you can turn this car best you can throughout those corners. Sometimes using that apron is the best way to do it.
It certainly is. Of course, this track here at Hickory Motor Speedway is a main staple of NASCAR history. Of course, we've seen some of the biggest stars in motorsports and the NASCAR competition come, compete, and win at this circuit. Of course, one driver we can think of who recent years is, of course, driver in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, Josh Berry, who's picked up multiple wins here in this series. And as we see this here going on is final warm-up before we get things started with qualifying. There you see Barney the Flagman waving the checkered flag to end, of course, the final warm-up before we get things started with qualifying. And then, of course, our featured race here today. With that, qualifying should be getting ready to go underway, and we'll go ahead and see who will be able to set the fastest lap here at the hallowed grounds of Hickory Motor Speedway. There we see one of the drivers coming out onto the circuit. Now, Devin, we got to talk a little bit about the importance of qualifying. I mean, two different styles of racing we've been seeing today here. One, of course, with the road racing with the open wheel machinery, and now we're seeing this with stock cars, the importance of qualifying. And as we continue to watch here the action in that number 2 machine out on the racetrack, trying to set his first time lap momentarily, action will be getting ready to underway. The first few times will be set here as he comes across the line to start his first flying lap here in tonight's racing action. A couple of other vehicles now rejoining the circuit. Now we see the 13 machine coming onto the circuit in his Arca car. Of course, this car has been a part of the iRacing service for a good long time. This is one of the original stock cars that has been added to the service back in the early years of the iRacing platform. And a lot of drivers have utilized this as an opportunity for competitors to work their way through the ranks of the oval stock car ladder here on the iRacing service. And as we continue to see some of these cars finish up their qualifying attempts, we should be seeing who will have the fastest lap momentarily. As we watch on to the action here, a couple of more cars are finishing up their qualifying attempts. Here comes the one car coming onto the circuit to complete his qualifying attempts and working his way through. And as we watch here, Devin, we got to talk a little bit about the importance we're seeing here with this race. A little bit more different. These cars are going to have a lot more wear and tear on the tires because drivers will not get the really chance to make a pit stop because there is no cautions for this event. It is pretty much a race to the finish, green flag to checkered flag. And it looks like qualifying is almost completed. A couple of cars have just completed their stop.
What we have here is going to be a 60-lap race. And while in terms, maybe that's not the longest race that you can do, when you do not want to go and pit, all of your mindset is saving that right front tire. You don't want to overheat. You don't want to wear it. You're going to be a little bit more ginger on corner entry to make sure that that car can turn just like it did on lap 1 when you get to lap 60. The amount of brake input that you have to put in at this track to be successful. And that's the key, to be successful. You can go around this track very poorly, finish top 5 if you want, but in this kind of a race where you're going 60 laps, no new tires, you need to prioritize what you're doing to save that right front without losing the pace too much.
It's going to be so critical to see here as we see some more cars coming out onto the track. Currently, the 3 car of Creighton has the fastest time with a 14.660. He's about half a tenth fast off the pace compared to Gauthier, who sits in second position. Kendricks will be in third. And with that, the clock is continuing to wind down. About a minute and a quarter left on the clock. 12 cars have registered a lap time here today, but just shows how competitive this group of cars are. We are separated by just 0.6 of a second between your top 13.
And that's going to make things extremely fun when you come to a short track like this. This year is going to be your top split. And when you look at the numbers on the car when they get on screen, Kenneth and that first group talked about a little bit, but those numbers on the cars are not selected by those drivers. the driver number is actually based on their iRating. Essentially, they're ranking the points that they get from racing in an oval series, an asphalt oval series. And essentially, number 1, that is the highest iRating in the field. You're looking at number 14, that's the second lowest iRating in the field. So the numbers are based on essentially your overall ranking on the service inside of this room right here. So you expect to have guys like John Creighton, number 3 up front, Ryan Kendrick, the number 1 seed, if you will, in third. But you always will have a few guys with a lower iRating that still know how to get it done. The number 9 car, the 9th ranking in this race, Brandon Gaither right now, sitting in that number 2 spot. You never know what kind of drivers you are going to get in any given race.
And with that, qualifying is about to get finished up here, and we will give you the starting lineup as best we can. We're working on a couple of things to get things going, but here at America's famous short track at Hickory, we're about to turn them loose here for this great racing action here at Hickory. Devin, of course, one thing we have to talk about while we're waiting for the grid to line up, of course, is this track is by far probably one of my most favorite short tracks here on the schedule. This provides a lot of racing action where you can utilize multiple grooves when setting up in this racing. And, of course, making sure that you hit your marks to kind of propel you off the corners because of how banked this track is compared to some of the other short tracks that we have on the service. And as qualifying has come to a close, we will go ahead and give you your starting lineup here today. John Creighton is on the front row with the pole time, and along with Brandon Gauthier in row number 2 is going to be Ryan Kendrick with Jake Bowser in the 3rd and 4th position. Row 3, as we move on through the field, a lot of great drivers in this field. Richard McRae and Frankie Stickley in row 3. Moving on to row number 4, we will have in the 7th and 8th position, Tony Krager and Justin Bullock in 8th position in the 11 machine. And rounding out your top 10 is Lee Overton and Corey Kunkel. And that moving on, though, to row number 6, we will see a couple of other drivers also making some great strides. Cameron Hess and Steven Smith in the 13 machine in 12th position. And currently in our final row, row number 7, it is going to be Sebastian Russell and Andrew Lotz riding shotgun in 14.
And now what we have here when you start this race, Taylor, you have to prioritize, like we said, that right front tire. But if you get too murked back in this field, that's where you're going to run into issues. You will burn up your tire significantly more when you're trying to battle with other drivers, as opposed to if you're already up front, you're trying to track someone down. So if you're someone who's being very careful about that right front tire, you still need to be concerned about what you are doing passing cars, and you can't get sent too far to the back at the start of this race while still trying to be conservative. Very difficult maneuvering in these kinds of cars at a 3rd-mile track like Hickory.
It certainly is. Of course, today's action is 60 laps here. No cautions, as we pointed out early on. For those who are wanting to know why, if that's the case, usually in the classes such as D and rookie class, we keep it at no cautions because of how short the races are, and also to help try and train drivers to be able to save tires, especially on these long runs, because there is no cautions. There's no brakes, Devin. There's no really a chance to come down pit road unless you get caught up in an incident where you have to come down and utilize one of the fast repairs that you can to get back on the track.
Yeah, and since there is no fast repairs, or no cautions, excuse me, if you're going to use a fast repair, sayonara, buddy, you are done for the day. You cannot pit in a 60-lap race at a track this small. You're going to immediately get lapped. And this is where some chaos happens. This is a series where it happens because this is still a lot of people either learning the service sometimes, or it's also just a very tough test. People underrate how difficult short track racing is, especially in heavy stock cars. So sometimes the chaos happens in this D-Class series, and remember, it's a D-Class series. That is the series right above rookie. Of the 5 categories of the public iRacing service that we have, this is the 2nd lowest. So every now and again, you get some guys who are still learning how to race short tracks.
They certainly are, and as we see them behind the beautiful iRacing pace car, it'll make the hard left turn down on pit road as Barney the Flagman will wave the green flag as we kick off 60 laps here at Hickory, and already some great racing action. They're going to be nose to tail. There you see that machine up in the front. That's Creighton, who will hold on to the pole position. He has Gauthier right there in 2nd. Kendrick will be in 3rd in the 1 machine as they come out of turn number 4 for the first time. Lap 1 completed, and we see Gauthier trying to take a look to the outside, now slide to the inside. Side by side, battle for the race lead as they head into turn 3.
And already you saw how you can utilize multiple different lanes. He started high, cut down, and was able to cross him over in the center of the corner. Now has the preferred lane here, going through 1 and 2. New leader, the number 9. And how about Ryan Kendrick in that black and white number 1 car? Not able to follow, but you can see he is really hounding the rear bumper right now. John Creighton trying to use the outside lane here, Taylor.
He certainly is. Ryan Kendrick, a well-known driver here in the Arca Menard Series, and he is going to try to put the pressure on. He's the number 1 car for a reason. He's picked up many wins over his career here on the iRacing service, as he will try to find the opening he needs to get around Creighton. He'll look to the inside. He tries to stick his nose, but not enough momentum to make it stick this time. But I think as they work through 1 and 2, he will complete that pass, move him up to P2. But for Gauthier, he is grinning from ear to ear as he is already checked out from the rest of the field.
Keep an eye on Jack Buster. That's that white and black number 2 car behind Ryan Kendrick. Made the move to move into that 3rd position around John Creighton. That 3 car starting to fall backwards, and it's for a good reason. That number 1 car, number 2 car, they both have I ratings of 3,600 plus. Meanwhile, most of these guys around the 2,000, including right here. The number 8 car, Frankie Sticky, and the number 6 machine, number 8 machine gets sent up a little bit. Justin Bullock got to that left rear quarter panel, a little bit of a bump and run there to move into the 6th spot.
Justin Bullock now moves up into P6 after starting towards the mid-top 10s, and now is starting to get his way closer to the top 5. Stickley, though, and to see if he can keep pace with them. Then you have, of course, Gregor and Hess now in the 8th and 9th position as they work their way through the field and out of turn number 4. Single file for the most part until you get a little further outside the top 10. A couple of side-by-side action. But as we go back up to the front of the field, there you see the 2 of Jack Busser, who is trying to keep up with the rest of the field. He's trying to catch up to Kendrick, who is trying to close back in on your race leader, Gauthier, who now opens the door up for him as they come out of turn number 2. He took to the outside lane last time by through middle of 1 and 2.
Gauthier got the wall on entry there, was not able to set himself up to get to the inside lane. Lost only a 10th, which is actually somewhat incredible with the mistake. Kind of that large in turn number 1. But you can really tell right now that both Kendrick and Buster trying to track down Gauthier is kind of just relaxing. You can't go and full burst someone right now and then just lose your right front. You have to have a certain amount of patience to succeed at these short tracks. Hickory was built back in 1951 when they opened, and it's always been a short track. And this 1/3 mile track, the amount of heavy braking that is needed, in a way, your right front also helps slow down the car. You put so much pressure on that right front when you dig into that corner at high speeds, so you want to try to take a little bit of pressure off that right front by adding in more braking. The more braking you do, the more it heats up the rear end. That's when your right rear starts to slide out as well here. So it's a very delicate balance when you have these cars. And for now, Ryan Kendrick is really beginning to zone in on the rear bumper of Gauthier. He's really starting to run away from Buster, who's now under attack once more from John Creighton.
Yeah, they worked by some lap traffic who had a little bit of trouble in the middle of turns 1 and 2, but they are now sorting themselves out. But Ryan Kendrick trying to close that gap on Gauthier as he has now dropped it down to about, I'd say 0.3 of a second between your top 2 as they see Jack Busser trying to close the gap. Creighton in that number 3 machine also trying to keep pace with the top 3. So your 4 cars here battling for the race lead. Then, of course, you have Butler right there in the 11 machine, who is now broken into the top 5 as they work back into 3 and 4.
In a track like this, Taylor, you know it's all about rhythm. And what I'm seeing right now out of Ryan Kendrick, I absolutely love. It's the reason why he has the number 1 I rating in this event almost every single corner. You'll see him enter a little bit higher than Gauthier going into 3 here, and he comes down and he's apexing every corner. Those left sides are just barely touching that somewhat visible yellow line. Meanwhile, we had a little bit of issues towards the back. It's like Tony Krager had themselves a little bit of an issue here, Taylor.
Let's take a look at Tony Krager as he will send it into turn 3 and 4, and there we go, a little bit of bumping and banging here as he gets a little bit of help entering into turn 1. Of course, that's short track racing for you. We're going to see some drivers utilize the chrome horn sometimes, and unfortunately, though, that will affect their safety rating. For those of you wondering what the safety rating is, it's a way to show practice clean driving. And in order to get out of this series, if you are a D-class driver, you have to race cleanly in order to have a chance to move up into the other series that are on the iRacing service, especially in the C, B, and A-class driving, which are pretty much some of the top favorites when it comes to racing on the iRacing oval side.
And some people don't understand this, but it's not necessarily always intentional when stuff like that happens. Using the chrome horn is an art that, of course, you can also try to master when you go on to iRacing. This is one of those series where you get to learn the ropes of short track racing. Right now, Taylor, 40% off. That doesn't always happen. I like my 40% off. And, you know, when you do a year or 2 years, it's even cheaper that way. But if you want a little bit more information on how to start that iRacing career, and learn how to use the chrome horn correctly. iRacing.com is where to go. Learn a little bit more information.
Certainly is a lot of great content for those who just utilize the starter, for those who get that 40% off for new membership. A lot of great racing tracks and cars to choose from in those early stages. But now we go back up to your top three, and here they come. We see Ryan Kendrick starting to fall off a little bit now on Gauthier, who is right there pulling away a little bit more over Kendrick. Jack Gooser right there trying to see if he can keep pace with the third place.
Looks like an issue as well. We'll go back a little bit further. An issue with Steven Smith in the number 13 car, the black number 13 with the MPI on the hood. See a little bit high and a little bit damaged car in front of it. And again, this is just a little bit of contact. Sebastian Russell gets into the rear bumper. And like I said, it's not always intentional, Taylor. Every now and again, it's just a change, a difference in philosophy. Where are you braking? As John Creighton sends it in turn number 3. Pushed up though, almost got to the door. Buster, who's going to miss turn number 1. He slides up the track. John Creighton, he was your pole sitter, now back into 3rd after falling back to 4.
John Creighton now trying to storm a charge up. He'll get a little bit sideways. Around he goes into the inside wall. Unfortunately for Creighton, his day will be done with that contact, at least for winning the race. Unfortunate day for him after that small mistake that cost him the chance of victory here. Here we go back up through the field, and there's Creighton still trying to recover around and nearly collects the number 1 of Ryan Kendrick. Gets himself going, and he will continue on his way. But for Gauthier, a big wide-eyed moment when he came out of turn number 4 to see Creighton still stuck on the inside.
Yeah, when you're the leader, the last thing that you ever want to see is a lap car turn the other direction staring at you. A little bit further back, this is the battle for 7th here. Cameron Hess and Corey Knuckle right now trying to battle it out, and you see that 7 car trying to gain a little bit of room. Entering the corner a little bit higher here, Taylor, trying to utilize that outside lane, and it's going to be difficult right now with just how hot the track is. 117-degree track temperature, but back in practice and qualifying, it was 138, so the track is actually cooled down just a little bit now, but boy, those tires do not like the heat of 117 degrees. And you see Hess using that apron to help turn the car on exit as well, so really good usability of the entire track right now by Hess.
Well, for those of you wondering, you see that yellow stripe up ahead on the car as we ride on board. That's what we utilize to determine your licensing as well as also your class of driver. As of course we see the blue, that means the highest level here on the iRacing service, the A license, which enables you to compete in some of the top echelons of the iRacing service, including in the NASCAR iRacing series. That C-Class, that yellow stripe on the back, that's not a rookie stripe, that's a C-Class stripe right there for that driver right up in there. That's a 4 machine. And a couple of other cars you'll see across as we go back up front there. You see a couple of A-Class drivers battling it out for the race lead.
Gaither right now is doing himself a great job. He's extended his lead by about 1/10.5 since we last saw him. The gap is now nearly to 0.7 of a second. As Kendrick gets continuously hounded by Buster right directly behind him. You try to find whatever advantage you can. What is the guy in front of me not doing? How do we change it right now? And you see on board here with Kendrick, the way that he's actually a little bit lower in the apex, I'm wondering, Taylor, if Buster has actually saved a little bit more tire than Kendrick has. Now, Kendrick, he might, I don't know if he missed the corner, if he's going to try to roll over and allow the two to take this position.
Well, that is one of the most important things with these series, that don't allow cautions in this, where you can change tires anytime under a caution if it opens up the opportunity. This is where you have to learn tire management and taking care of your equipment for these long periods of time, and that's what helps some of these drivers to learn more about that, to be able to work their way up through the rankings on the iRacing service. Because let's be honest, there is times where in some of the official iRacing series they can go the same way from green to checkered without a single caution, so you have to make sure you manage your tires in order to utilize the best possible outcome and maybe take home the checkered flag. And for Buster, that might be the opportunity for him with how well he's taking care of his tires.
Boy, I tell you what, Hess is not having a good time right now. Knuckle has not left the rear bumper of that number 4 machine as they catch up to some more lap traffic. I mean, Knuckle has just been absolutely mauling the rear bumper without touching. I mean, he's just constantly there. And this has also allowed the number 14 car, Matt Wasco, to actually catch up as well. So as we are in the second half of this race, coming to 21 laps to go this time, this is where what tires you have left, you have to utilize it. Because, Taylor, one thing that I've yet to learn on iRacing how to do, you can save all the tire that you want, right? But if you don't use it when you need to, what was the point of saving the tires if the 4 car pushes a little bit here on corner exit?
It is very important, and that's that's one of the things that a lot of people like to try and learn is that tire management, because like you said, what's the point of saving tires if you don't use it properly and get that right time and momentum to utilize it and go and attack for that position or to gain ground on your competitor if you start to fall back a little bit. But as we watch Kunkel and Hess battle out, here comes Wasco as well, as they will battle for that position. He'll look to the inside, Kunkel right there to the inside of Hess, and he might have the door open enough to send it into turn 3 and 4. Not quite yet. A little bit of contact possibly as they come out of 4, and Kunkel will get around Hess for that position.
I mean, Knuckle worked about, 40 laps on that pass there. Now we have another pass. Issues for Ryan Kendrick as he went way up in 3 and 4. He completely missed the corner, and it looks like he allowed that 3 car to go around by him. So, and now he gets loose too. Man, issues for that 3 car who, I don't know if he has fresher tires or not. John Crane, remember, we saw him spin earlier, so the 1 car might be saying, you know what, lead me up to Gaithier, who is now over a second ahead, and let's see if they can try to track down your leader coming to 15 laps to go.
He is going to try to let him by and keep into pace with Creighton as they work their way through the middle of turn 3 and 4. Ryan Kendrick, though, has quite a pace back to try to catch up to Buster and Gauthier, who are now leading the rest of the field and working through lap traffic, which is a bit of a situation for your top 2 because, as we know, when it comes to short track racing or any form of racing, usually it's a little bit difficult for the leader to get by lap traffic because they don't want to go a lap down. Unlike the second place driver who, they've already been a lap down, they're going to just go ahead and let that second place guy on by in order to keep up the battle. So it's a mix of pick and choose when to find the opening to get around lap traffic is going to be critical here for these next 13 laps for Gauthier.
But even second on back, Taylor, there's no good spot to catch a lap car on a short track. Either you catch them on corner exit and you can't get that power down on exit because you can't go all the way up the track, so you lose time on exit, or if you're passing them on corner entry, you don't have that wide arcing motion. You have to slow down sooner. So unless you can magically either have them let you by in the middle of the corner and their way on the outside, or if you can pass them on the straightaway, there's no good way to catch a lap car, even when you're not the leader.
Certainly is the case as we see Kunkel in the 7 and here trying to hold off Wasco in the 14 machine, who's having a good run inside the top 7 as they're trying to battle for that 7th spot. Kunkel holding off Wasco. Then you have Bristol there in the 6 machine right behind him. 3 cars battling, separated by about 4/10 of a second now. They're quite a ways back to the 6th place position, 3 seconds up the road, but this is a great battle between Kunkel, Wasco, and Russell as they head back into turn 1 and 2 with 10 laps to go.
And Kunkel is running great lap times right now, a little bit faster than your leader, but you look at what Wasco is doing, he's running actually a couple hundredths faster than Kunkel. So, hey, like I said, the number 14, that means he has the 14th best iRating or the 2nd worst iRating in this class. iRating does not mean everything in iRacing, guys. I don't care who else tells me. Look at what they're having to do here against these lappers. Wasco is using those picks best he can to get back up to that rear bumper of Kunkel, and now almost has the door open. All he needs is that left rear quarter panel to slide up the track a little bit, and he can squeeze that nose in there.
He's going to try to squeeze his nose once again through 3 and 4. Can't get close enough that time around as they come out of 4. And Kunkel will stretch the gap out to about a car length now over Wasco. But Wasco's going to get back onto the power as they come out of turn number 2 down the back straightaway. A little bit of smooth sailing right now for Kunkel. No lap traffic at this time as you ride on board with him out of turn number 4. As they continue to do battle here, it's no change up front. Gauthier still holds a 7/10 of a second lead over Booster as they get the big high 5 laps to go here at Hickory.
And Booster has been chipping away. It was over a 1 second difference, and now the gap has shrunk to about 7/10, so we'll see what else he can do. But for Kunkel, he has Wasco and Russell. Those 2 black cars behind him are actually catching up to him just a little bit, so you have to be able to, whatever tire you save, hold off those guys behind you. And if he's lucky, right now it looks like Russell wants to take away that 8th position. That is best possible scenario right now for Kunkel.
It certainly is. There's Gauthier, and then you see also the battle for 7th with Kunkel, who is trying to pull away from the rest of the field of Wasco and Ruskell. But as they come through the middle of turn 3 and 4, your race leader Gauthier now gets the big 2 laps to go. 2 laps for him as he tries to work his way through. A little bit of lap traffic up ahead of him, but I think he might not catch them before he gets the white flag in front of the flag man as he has to go one more time around here at Hickory. Barney waves the white flag one more time around.
The masterful pace we saw when he was getting hounded by your leaders, was able to make the gap up, and then once he got away, no one could catch him, Taylor.
No one could catch him indeed, as he was able to steal it away from Creighton. Gauthier wins here at Hickory. Great racing action here at Hickory Motor Speedway as we see the rest of the field start to work their way around here to complete the racing action. Barney the flagman waving vigorously that checker flag as a couple of cars decide to go drifting across the start-finish line to end their racing action here. There's Kunkel in the 7 machine as we see Gauthier park it in victory circle.
I implore anyone on iRacing, whenever you win a race and there is a checkered anything on the ground, outdoors my favorite one, by the way, but if you win a race, you got to go to victory lane if it's accessible and enjoy what you did. Any official race, you never know who's going to be in that race. You never know how things are going to turn out. And when you can go out and get a win, every official win and even the hosted wins are always important.
It certainly is, and who knows, maybe since you're racing at the birthplace of NASCAR stars, maybe one day you could have a shot of competing in the virtual and the real world of NASCAR and NASCAR competition. So a lot of great racing action here today, Devin. I mean, we saw, of course, starting off with the Grand Prix cars at Barcelona, where we saw the wonderful new technology and, of course, some good old-fashioned short-track racing at Hickory Motor Speedway with the Arca cars, some of the iconic cars here on the iRacing service. As we go through the finishing results, Brandon Gauthier will take home that win here today with a strong performance, but overall, though, a really great race, as here's the rest of your field. Jack Booser is in second with Ryan Kendrick third. Justin Bullock was in fourth with Frankie Stickley will come home in fifth. Some great racing action, Devin. I mean, what are some of the taking points from you seeing the action here?
Well, you gotta love short track racing all the time, and for someone like me, I always want to go back and look at what made someone successful when it comes down to like short track racing, saving that right front tire. When you look at what Gaither was able to do in that race, not only did he have that pressure early on, but he was able to keep that consistent pace. He didn't try to outrun everyone to begin this race. And then once those other guys started to use up more of those tires, had to go through lap traffic like he did, that's when he started to put the accelerator on a little bit more. It all comes down to that tire management. And anywhere on iRacing, I think we saw both in the first race and in this race, patience and management were two of the key words in both of these events. And if you want to try to get involved with a little bit of this management, learn how to take these cars around the track, 40% off right now on iRacing.com.
It certainly is. Make sure to go visit iRacing.com today, and you might have a chance to park it at Victory Lane like we saw with Gauthier. Of course, for all of us here at iRacing, we want to say thank you for tuning in to the happy hour here on iRacing.